Hello, and welcome to Privacy News Today, presented to you by Termageddon.com. Termageddon is an auto-updating website policies generator, and we've generated tens of thousands of privacy policies and kept them up to date with changing legislation. So we also keep track of privacy news as well. So today we're going to talk about the latest news from Google, in which Google was required to delete user data in an incognito lawsuit. I wanted to note that anything that we talk about today is presented for informational purposes only and is not legal advice. If you are looking for legal advice, I recommend speaking to a lawyer in your area. So, first of all, what is the Incognito lawsuit? So, in 2020, a class action lawsuit was filed about Google Chrome's Incognito browser mode. So, a lot of people have used the browser in incognito mode thinking that they were incognito, meaning that their information was private, that they weren't being tracked, or anything like that. And basically, the lawsuit said that Google's analytics, cookies, and apps tracked users while they were using the Google Chrome browser in incognito mode. Basically, this said that Google misrepresented to people that their information would be private while they were browsing in incognito and that they wouldn't be tracked. And basically, this allowed the company to collect a quote unquote unaccountable trove of information about people who assume that they have taken appropriate steps to protect their privacy online. Interestingly enough, I noticed this around the same time as well. So I'd use Google's incognito mode for testing, and then after I would close the tab and open up a new incognito window, I noticed that some of my information was still pre-fillable in forms, which seems strange because the notices on Google Chrome in incognito mode at the time said that you would not be tracked and that your browsing would be private. And apparently, a lot of people thought this, and that's why the class action lawsuit was filed. At the time, the lawsuit sought about $5 billion in damages as well for these misrepresentations and for continuing to track people, even though they thought that they weren't going to be tracked. Now, since 2020, Google agreed to delete the billions of data records that were collected through the incognito mode of Chrome. In the privacy world, we call this data disgorgement, which means that data that was illegally obtained or obtained improperly has to be deleted. Google also promised that it will allow users to block tracking cookies used for advertising and that it will disclose exactly what data it retains on users, including when people are using incognito mode. They're also changing the notices on the browser as well to make it more clear that websites may still track you while you're using incognito mode. Now, initially, the lawsuit sought $5 billion in damages, but the settlement amount was actually not disclosed in the paperwork here. But it does allow people to still retain the right to sue Google over the tracking individually. So that's another point of recourse. What I thought was interesting is that one of Google's spokespersons said that the lawsuit initially sought $5 billion worth of damages, but Google is paying zero. So they seem pretty smug about this as well. And they also said that the data that's being deleted is old data that does not actually relate to people. So it's unclear as to what kind of data records are actually being deleted or removed. It'll be interesting to see how this progresses, especially in the light of the statements from Google's representative. It seems like in the past, these types of statements were not taken well by courts or by legislators. So it will be interesting to see what happens in the future. But just so you know, if you are using Chrome in incognito mode, you can still be tracked through analytics and cookies. You may be able to block those now. But before the settlement, that was not actually the case. So that's the most recent news on Google's incognito lawsuit.